Hi, my name is Steve Nelson, and I would like to thank you for choosing the Diamabrush system to polish your concrete floor. We have created this user-friendly training module to provide you, the end user, with the necessary knowledge and training to polish your own floor as part of your daily cleaning routine. The Diamabrush system will allow you to restore your floors to a high polish using your existing standard cleaning equipment, such as an automatic scrubber or single disc flooring machine. The benefits of using the Diamabrush system are simple. First, you will be able to achieve a professional polish result while saving nearly 80 to 90% of the cost of hiring a professional contractor. Second, our system will provide you with the flexibility to polish your floors at your own pace in small or large sections at a time, avoiding costly shutdown time you may experience when hiring a contractor. And finally, and most importantly, our system provides you the ability to maintain your polished floor indefinitely by simply cleaning the floor on a routine basis. Prior to starting the polishing process, there are a few brief operating procedures that I would like to cover that will allow you to maximize the effectiveness and the life of the Diamabrush tools. These procedures are required and should be followed every time the Diamabrush tools are used. 1. Always operate the Diamabrush polishing system with water. The Diamabrush polishing system should be run with water always. Running the tools dry will lead to premature wear of the Diamabrush blades and may lead to ineffective results. Most automatic scrubbers dispense water as they operate. However, if a single disc machine is used, be sure to apply water to the surface prior to using the Diamabrush tools. Using a simple pump sprayer or garden hose to dampen the floor should be sufficient. There is no need to flood the area being polished. 2. Proper machine travel speed. When using the Diamabrush system, the pace at which the operator moves the cleaning machine is critical to the overall effectiveness of the tools. Operators must walk at a pace of approximately 1 to 1.5 miles per hour, which is much slower than the typical floor scrubbing and cleaning pace. The slow pace will give the brushes a chance to consistently work the concrete, making sure to reach any low spots that may be in the floor. 3. Always use maximum or heaviest down pressure. When using an automatic scrubber to run the Diamabrush system, the machine should be set to run on the setting that applies the heaviest down pressure. Most automatic scrubbers have variable down pressure settings that are displayed in pounds, ranging from light down pressure to a heavy down pressure. Although the Diamabrush tools will work on machines with as light as 90 pounds of down pressure, as a general rule of thumb, the heavier the down pressure the machine can apply, the better the overall result of the polish will be. 4. Never skip steps in the Diamabrush process. The final requirement to make sure to follow when operating the Diamabrush system is to never skip steps in the process. It is imperative that once you establish a correct starting grit and the subsequent grits that follow, that you do not try to skip steps to shortcut the process. Skipping steps will drastically worsen the overall polishing result that you are able to achieve. 5. Soak the polymer polishing tools. It is important to soak the blades prior to the initial use. Soaking the blades properly conditions the tools to ensure the blades are not brittle. You should soak the blades in cold water for 72 hours. You will only need to re-soak the blades if they are not used for long periods of time. Because each concrete floor is unique and different, determining the appropriate starting grit is the most important part of successfully polishing your floors. If you do not select the appropriate starting grit, you will never achieve the best polishing result possible. Here's a simple guideline to follow that will get you started on the appropriate grit and the subsequent steps to follow in the polishing process.
1. If you have any type of coating or sealer on the floor, epoxy, adhesive, mastic, paint, or wax, you must begin with the 25 grit removal tool to remove the coating. You would then use, in order, the following tools. Either the 100 grit metal concrete prep or 100 grit metal concrete prep plus tools, the 50 grit polymer, the 100 grit polymer, the 200 grit polymer, the 400 grit polymer, the 1000 grit polymer, and finally the 2000 grit polymer tools. 2. If your floor has heavy buildup of dirt and debris, is pitted or spalled concrete, you must begin with either the 25 grit metal concrete prep or 25 grit metal concrete prep plus tools to level and even out the floor. You would then use, in order, the following tools. Either the 100 grit metal concrete prep or 100 grit metal concrete prep plus tools, the 50 grit polymer, the 100 grit polymer, the 200 grit polymer, the 400 grit polymer, the 1000 grit polymer, and finally the 2000 grit polymer tools. 3. If you have an old concrete floor that has some minor pitting or erosion, you would begin with either the 100 grit metal concrete prep or 100 grit metal concrete prep plus tools to smooth out the floor. You would then use, in order, the following tools: the 50 grit polymer, the 100 grit polymer, the 200 grit polymer, the 400 grit polymer, the 1000 grit polymer, and finally the 2000 grit polymer tools. Finally, if your concrete is relatively smooth but is worn and dull, such as this floor here, you would begin with the 50 grit gold. You would then follow in order with the 100 grit black, the 200 grit blue, the 400 grit green, the 1000 grit red, and the 2000 grit tan. Taking the time to assess your floor and determine the appropriate starting grit is a crucial first step in achieving a polished floor. Following these guidelines will simplify the process and ensure you are starting on the appropriate grit. Now that you have selected the appropriate starting grit for your floor, you are ready to begin the polishing process. In order to achieve optimal results using Diamabrush, it is important to separate the polishing process into two phases: Phase 1, restoration, and Phase 2, maintenance. During the restoration phase, you will be restoring your floor from a dull, dirty floor to a clean, polished floor. To do so, you will be following a multi-step progression of grits from coarse grit through finer grits to reach the desired result of a polished floor. Operators will make multiple passes with each grit over the area to be polished, making sure to follow the operating requirements outlined in Chapter 2 of this training module. At this point, we are ready to walk through each individual grit and describe how to perform the step and what to expect as you progress through each step in the Diamabrush system. The first grit we are using on this floor is the 50 grit polymer tool. The objective of this step is to smooth and level the concrete, creating an evenly white and uniform surface. This is the first step in the polishing process, and it is by far the most crucial. You must spend the time to get this step right. Operating the machine at a very slow pace is extremely important during this step. You will need to make approximately 10 to 12 passes with the 50 grit polymer tool. It is important to move the machine as slowly as possible during each pass, as this will allow the brush the opportunity to make multiple revolutions over the floor and create a more level surface. We've just completed 5 passes with the 50 grit polymer tool. As you can see, there are dark and light spots on the floor. The darker areas represent low spots in the concrete that have not been evenly leveled. If you slowly rub your hand on the dark spots, you can feel the coarseness of the low spots in the concrete versus the lighter colored areas, which are smoother to the touch. This is an indication that additional passes are required or your pace is too fast. Again, the goal of this step is to smooth and level the concrete, creating an evenly white and uniform surface. It is extremely important to get this step right. Not completely leveling the floor during this step will negatively affect the final results. If you've made the requisite number of passes at the correct pace and you still have this type of finish, you may need to drop down to a coarser grit tool. We've just completed 10 passes with the 50 grit polymer tool. As you can see, the floor has been leveled and the dark spots in the concrete have been removed. This is the finished result you're looking for with the 50 grit polymer tool. You're now ready to begin using the 100 grit polymer tool, the next step in the Diamabrush polishing process. The 100 grit polymer tool was primarily used to remove the scratches left in the floor from the 50 grit polymer tool. This tool is still cutting the floor, however, it will also begin to hone the floor, which will start to feel smooth to the touch. As always, the operator should run the machine at a very slow pace with this step. You will need to make approximately 6 to 8 slow passes with the 100 grit polymer tool, making sure you are covering the entire area being polished. We've just completed 6 passes with the 100 grit polymer tool. The floor should start to take on a slightly darker color and start to feel somewhat smooth to the touch. Again, the goal with the 100 grit tool is to take out the scratches left by the previous step with the 50 grit tool and make the floor smooth. The 200 grit polymer tool is the next step in the Diamabrush system and is considered a transition step where you'll be moving from cutting the floor to honing or smoothing it. The 200 grit polymer tool will remove the scratches left in the floor from the 100 grit polymer tool and will leave the floor feeling noticeably smoother to the touch. The floor at this point will also begin to take on a moderate amount of gloss, something close to a matte finish. As always, the operator should run the machine at a very slow pace with this step to maximize effectiveness. You will need to make approximately 6 to 8 slow passes with the 200 grit polymer tool, making sure you are covering the entire area being polished. We've just completed 6 passes with the 200 grit polymer tool. The floor should start to take on a matte finish and will start to feel very smooth to the touch. Again, the goal with this step is to take out the scratches left by the previous tool and make the floor smoother with a slight gloss.
400 grit polymer tool is the next step in the Diamabrush system and will be the first step where you will see material gloss on the floor. The 400 grit polymer tool is a combination honing and polishing grit that will leave the floor feeling very smooth to the touch with a semi-gloss finish. The combination of the smoothness and the semi-gloss finish makes the 400 grit a solid choice as a stopping grit for end users that do not want or require a high gloss polish. The resulting 400 grit floor is very smooth, making it very easy to clean, and has a nice level of gloss to it from an aesthetic perspective. As always, the operator should run the machine at a very slow pace with this step to maximize effectiveness. You will need to make approximately 6 to 8 slow-paced passes with the 400 grit polymer tool, making sure you are covering the entire area being polished. If you are stopping at this grit, you would then continue to use the 400 grit brush in your daily cleaning routine, ensuring that your floor would retain the 400 grit shine and smoothness. We've just completed 6 passes with the 400 grit polymer tool. Notice the step up in gloss from the 200 grit tool as the floor is continuing to be closed off in the polishing process. Again, the goal with this step is to hone the floor smoother and polish it to a semi-gloss finish. The 1000 grit polymer tool is a polishing grit that polishes floor to a high gloss finish. This grit is a very popular choice as a stopping point for end users as they are getting a very high gloss polish and a tool that will still have the capability to remove moderate levels of buildup. As always, the operator should run the machine at a very slow pace with this step to maximize effectiveness. When running the polishing grits, a minimum of 6 to 8 passes is required. However, running additional passes will only further enhance the gloss on the floor, particularly if you have chosen to stop at the 1000 grit finish. Take a look at this shot of the floor before the polishing process began, and a second shot of the floor after completion of the polishing process with the 2000 grit polymer, and a final shot of the floor 1 year after everyday use. Not only does the floor retain its gloss, but repeated use of the 2000 grit tool will actually continue to improve the overall polish on the floor. Again, the goal with this step is to polish the floor to a very high gloss finish. The 2000 grit polymer tool is the final step in the Diamabrush system. This step is mainly for end users who desire a mirror-like finish to their concrete. The 2000 grit polymer tool is a polishing grit that polishes the floor to a very high gloss finish. This grit is a very popular choice as a stopping point for retailers and other end users who require a very high gloss finish. As always, the operator should run the machine at a very slow pace with this step to maximize effectiveness. Similar to the 1000 grit, when running the 2000 grit, a minimum of 6 to 8 passes is required. However, running additional passes will only further enhance the gloss on the floor. Take a look at this shot of the floor before the polishing process began, and a second shot of the floor after completion of the polishing process with the 2000 grit brush, and a final shot of the floor 1 year after everyday use with the 2000 grit brush. Not only does the floor retain its gloss, but repeated use of the 2000 grit tool will actually continue to improve the overall polish on the floor. Again, the goal with this step is to polish the floor to a very high gloss finish. Once you have successfully polished your floor with all the necessary grits, you are now ready to move into the maintenance phase of the Diamabrush system. During the maintenance phase, the operator will use their chosen stopping grit, either 400, 1000, or 2000, to clean with as part of their daily cleaning schedule. Our recommended cleaning schedule would be as follows. Clean high traffic areas such as main walkways, drive aisles, and shipping and receiving areas every day, and clean lower traffic areas at least once or twice a week. If areas that receive excessive traffic or have been neglected for reasons such as machine downtime, seasonal busy time begin to dull, simply make a few extra passes with your maintenance grit to restore the shine. In extreme cases, you may have to drop down 1 or 2 grits below your maintenance grit and follow the polishing procedures discussed in the restoration phase to return the worn areas to polish. With continued daily use during the maintenance phase, the floor's polish should be maintained indefinitely. Tracking the blade life is a critical part of the polishing process. A blade is considered worn if there is no longer color or grit remaining on the blade. It is extremely important not to run the Diamabrush blades past the colored portion, as you could potentially cause damage to your machine. To avoid this critical issue, make sure you are checking the Diamabrush tools at least once a week to assess the remaining blade life. If the blades look to have approximately 1/4 inch or less of the colored portion remaining, it is time to reorder the blades. When the tools have approximately 1/8 inch of the colored portion remaining, it is time to replace the blades. To replace the polymer blades, remove the screws that attach the black blade retainers to the brush block. It is recommended to use a No. 3 Phillips head screwdriver to prevent stripping the screws. To replace the polymer blades, remove the screws that attach the black blade retainers to the brush block. Remove the worn blades by simply pushing them through the retainer. Insert the new blades, making sure the bottom of the blade is flush and even with the larger recessed slot that is in the bottom side of the retainer. Reattach the retainers to the tool using a number 3 Phillips head screwdriver, being careful not to over-tighten and strip the screws. When finished, the blade should angle out and extend slightly past the outside perimeter of the brush block. Number 1, always use water. Number 2, always operate the machine at a very slow pace of 1 to 1.5 miles per hour. Number 3, always use the heaviest down pressure setting on the machine. Number 4, do not skip steps in the polishing process. Number 5, soak the polymer polishing blades prior to the initial use. Carefully following these requirements will significantly improve your overall polishing result. We have spent the past several minutes providing you with the necessary knowledge, training, and education to properly run the Diamabrush polishing system. Following these guidelines closely will allow you to achieve the optimal result with the Diamabrush system. Your old, dull, and dirty concrete floor can be transformed to a clean, shiny, polished finish using standard cleaning equipment while working at your own pace. The Diamabrush system will save you money and provide you the flexibility to polish on your own schedule and enable you to maintain the polish indefinitely through routine cleaning. Thanks very much for taking the time to learn about the Diamabrush polishing system, and once again, thanks for choosing Diamabrush.